Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Unbelievable Nerds podcast. And if you don't already know by the title, there's only one thing we can be discussing on the opening weekend of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and that's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, the first question I asked Grimmy just before recording was, have you emotionally recovered yet? Right? Because quite frankly, I think that's the only question you can really ask anyone when they leave the cinema after watching this film. In classic nerds review fashion, what we will be doing is we'll give a non-spoiler tiny review, and then we'll go into the big picture and actually explain what we thought about the bigger moments in the film. Because I nearly swore that. I nearly thought there's a lot of freaking moments in this film.
Yeah.
So many.
Yep.
So many, as you would expect in the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I think we all expected a big emotional roller coaster. And I don't want to just speak on behalf of both of us, but I would say it exceeded what I was expecting. And that's saying a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's there's a lot to unpack. And I think the non-spoiler review part of it is going to be very quick because we obviously can't go into too much detail in the non-spoiler part. But for me, I thought it was brilliant. It was harrowing at times. It was very dark at times, and it wasn't an easy film to watch at times. But I think you had the balance of the typical Guardians feel-good moments, balanced with probably the darkest stuff we've seen in a superhero film. Never mind a Marvel film. And that's, I think, all I can say about it, about in a quick fashion, without going into like specifics of what's happened.
Yeah. It's one of those that, as Grimmy very much mentioned, it's really hard to talk about this film without spoiling this film. But luckily, I think for my own sake, I spoke to one of my housemates about it when I came back from the cinema directly straight away. So I feel like there's a couple of things that I can mention without ruining too much. Number one, this is my bold statement, Grimmy, this is easily, and I mean easily, in my top 5 superhero films, possibly easily top 5 Marvel films for definite, possibly even top 5 superhero films I've ever seen. It makes you feel things that I've never really experienced, to be honest. Like you sit there and you go on this roller coaster, but the best part is that somehow, despite all the harrowing things, you do end up smiling all the way through. Like you have those really cool moments, you have the funny moments, and you have the incredibly sad, making me cry moments, which is exactly what this film did. Like, this is a brilliant film, brilliantly crafted, brilliantly paced. I genuinely, like, I had to go for a toilet break during this film. I hated that. Trying to pick my moment to go to the toilet during this film is almost impossible because, like any big finale, it's just, it is constant. Everything matters. I think the other thing I can mention without, again, going into spoilers is the High Evolutionary is a brilliant villain. Absolutely brilliant. That performance and just the writing, everything, I wanted to punch that man in the face. And he doesn't exist. And I wanted to punch him in the face. Like, that's how, like, brilliantly crafted this is. And yeah, I think, quite frankly, it's a brilliant end to what was and what is a brilliant trilogy. I feel like there is not a bad film in that trilogy. Every single film is a banger. And I think this tops it off perfectly for me. I just think it is just brilliant. Yeah. As I said, I don't think we can go into too much.
No, it's difficult. For me, I said this on the way home last night driving the car. I was like, for me, this is probably by far the best trilogy we have of the original sort of Marvel phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, whatever you want to call it, trilogies. So like likes of Iron Man, Thor, Spider-Man, Captain America. Trying to think of any other trilogies that they've been in. I can't really think of anything else. Ant-Man, yeah. It's definitely better than Ant-Man. Like, it's by far the best trilogy. And I think that's probably a good point as we hit 6 minutes to leave the non-spoiler part and get straight into it.
Spoilers ahead. At this point, if you haven't seen the film, and I mean this with my hand on heart, right, as if you're watching the video version, the banners below, spoilers are ahead past this point. And I don't say this lightly because I'm very much an advocate of, it doesn't matter. Watch, a lot of films don't, you don't need to spend your money. You can wait until it comes up on a streaming service or something like that. Don't wait. This is a film you have to watch in the cinema. You have to experience this. If you like The Guardians and you like any Marvel film, you need to watch this in the cinema because, quite frankly, I don't think it does it justice. I think I've given enough of a warning there. That's pretty much 1 minute of me just moaning at people that haven't watched it yet.
I think that's pretty clear that we're into spoiler territory now.
Yeah.
So I'll let you start, Bragster.
This film is good. I think a big talking point, I think that there's so many talking points. Let's start with someone that we've already mentioned, the High Evolutionary, right? A brilliant villain, because this feeds quite nicely into what the entire arc of the film is, which for those that have seen everyone at this point has seen the film that is continuing watching past this point. Quite frankly, that trailer is the most deceiving thing I've ever seen. What you go into expecting this film to be is not what this film is to be. The fact that Rocket is not, he is in half of this film, but in the present day and not in like the flashbacks and stuff. He is not a part of this film for the vast majority. Like, this is, the trailer is extremely, extremely deceiving. To the point where I actually think it paid off, because it made those first 5 minutes of the film really impactful, because you kind of sat there going, oh boy, okay. Like, it's that almost like heart-wrenching moment of, okay, they don't care. This is a film where they really don't care about subverting expectations and just like completely veering off course, to the point where I think those first 5 minutes just put you on the edge.
Oh yeah, they set it up perfectly. Yeah, like the use of the song "Creep" by Radiohead. The fact that it's Rocket sort of just sitting there contemplating everything, and then it's panning to like the flashback of him when he's obviously baby raccoon and in the cage, and then the hand comes out, and then it goes back, and then the attack happens, and it kicks off from there, and it's just like, it sets it up perfectly. I've never felt more unease at the start of a film. I think at the start of, because usually with Marvel there's these big like epic intros and battles, and it's like maybe some like sort of B-level villain that gets taken out, and it's like, right, the hero's here, doing fine and dandy, and it was very much the opposite of that. Yes, there was like the Warlock coming in, which I'm sure we'll get into in a bit. And like sort of kicking things off and trying to catch Rocket and do what he needs to do. As is explained later on in the film, what he's trying to do. But like the sort of eeriness of it is very creepy, and it was a bit unsettling. Which again, I think for the majority of the flashbacks, well, all of the flashbacks really, it was quite unsettling. But yeah, in terms of that first 5 minutes and like first 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever you want to timestamp you want to put on it, it was a very different introduction to most of what I would say, apart from maybe Endgame, because Endgame really was a slow burn of a start, but it had to be for how it ended in Infinity War. But yeah, this was totally different to anything we've really seen before.
Yeah, I mean, like having, as you said, like there was a lot of like harrowing bits at the start where you were kind of on edge to the point where like none of. I think the nice part is we're used to seeing the Guardians really happy, and this is, I think, the first time. I think we've really, well, maybe apart from obviously you got the Infinity War and Endgame bits, but I think this is the first time where every single member is struggling, and you can visually see that throughout the film. Like everyone is royally struggling in this film, and it's like, I think just it's brilliantly weighted between like, yeah, there's his happy fun moments, but you at the end of the day, every moment they get on their own or anything like that, you can see visibly they are struggling to cope with what's going on, and like, I think those flashbacks, as you mentioned, is exactly why I wanted to punch the High Evolutionary in the face. Because the way, like, how James Gunn got away with this, I will never know.
That was one of my first questions coming out. Like,
how he got away with, basically, quite frankly, it is, I would say, an inadvertent attack. It is not. It is a full-blown attack at anyone that does testing on animals. That is exactly what it is. It's fully just going, you're idiots. And it just, that's, I don't know how he got away with doing, like, really leaning in. And it wasn't just a lean, like, obviously we all know the four of Rocket, Floor, Lila, and Teefs. Bloody remembered that. I'm really happy with myself.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. I remembered Lila but I couldn't remember the other two.
Yeah, Floor and Teefs were the other two. And every moment you see with those four is quite harrowing on its own. Because obviously they're being tested on, they're being experimented on. And then somehow, some way, they step it up another level when he basically turns them into like mini humans. He turns the animals into like mini humans, and that's the moment where I go, "All right, he's a big bad." Like, this isn't like a big bad in terms of like Thanos, right, and Kangs and stuff like that, where they've got all the power in the world. This is just a class A prick. That is what he is. Right? There is no other way of putting it. And I think that is way more effective. Just having a villain that is just a prick is just so much better, because that entire time you want the Guardians to win, but not because like, oh my god, they're going to destroy the universe, because he makes that evidently clear that's not his point. He wants to perfect it, and and he's so perfectly well done and written that it does just make you want to punch him in the face.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, I don't even think it's just that. It's the performance. It's everything about the character, like the writing, the performance, the look, just everything, the interactions he has. It's just like, he is, for lack of a better term, for me, in terms of being a villain and being the bad guy of a film, he is probably the best bad guy, because there's just no sympathy, there's no empathy, there's no warmth, there isn't any understanding of what he's doing. Like with Thanos, even Thanos to a certain extent, not that I agree with what he was doing, but you could understand the reasoning of everything is going to pot in the universe, and we need to stop it.
And there was emotion there as well.
There's emotion there, and it's like every time he's interacting with Rocket in the film, in terms of the villain, is the High Enforcer,
the High Evolutionary.
Sorry, High Evolutionary. Every time he's interacting with Rocket, or he's interacting with a character, whether it's one of his minions or someone else like that, there's no sort of warmth to any of them. There's no sort of niceness. There's no gentleness. There's nothing like that. Like even when he's just sat next to Rocket and he's talking to him, and then he's talking about how he's like trying to understand how he understands things, like, and then he's putting his hand around Rocket's head.
Oh, it's made me so uncomfortable.
It's those little touches that are like he's not like squeezing him. He's just putting his hand around his head to understand it. That's what, and he's explaining to him what he's doing, and it's like those little things show how cold and calculating and how there is really nothing that he cares about other than just perfecting what he's trying to build. And yeah, I think he's by far the best in terms of being a villain and being someone to rally against. Yeah. I think he is someone. I think he's by far one of the best Marvel villains we've ever had.
Easily. And
yeah, there's just no siding. Nobody can walk out of that thinking he's a cool character or he's someone that, like, because sometimes you get villains where you're like, oh, I think they're pretty cool as a villain. Or
well, like, even Kang in Ant-Man, I would say, like, there were moments where I sat there, I watched Kang, and I was like, okay, he's quite cool. Like, there's nothing
retrievable, redeeming about this guy. He's pure, unadulterated, I'm going to swear, cold-hearted bastard. Like, there's nothing redeeming about him. And to be honest, with everything that's going on with obviously Jonathan Majors and Kang at the minute, like all the sort of won't he still be there?
Yeah.
I wouldn't back against them making that guy Kang. Like if they brought him back in and were like, make him Kang, make him the great enforcer, like the enforcer, and make him the big bad of this. Because I think the Kang that comes back is going to be much closer to the Evolutionary than he is the Kang we see in Ant-Man and other things. So yeah, for me, I think he's one of the best villains there is. I think the next thing for me is I like the fact that it very much is Rocket's film. Yeah. But I like the fact that it's about all the Guardians this time. Because I think in the first couple of films, it was very much Peter's story. And yes, there were subplots going on of all the Guardians. But I think this really is the team movie of... Yeah. It isn't just Peter who's got... It's like what you said before. At the start, you know everyone's going through something. And it's the fact that it all sort of interweaves and everyone's dealing with everyone's problems. It's not just we're all trying to help Peter. We're trying to help Nebula. We're trying to help Drax. We're trying to help Mantis. And we're trying to help Rocket. And I mean, Groot's probably the only one who you're probably like, he's probably the most okay. But again, he's still trying to help Rocket. So,
but this is the thing: is him and Rocket are the closest.
Well, yeah.
And you can visibly see, I would say, anger. I would say this is like, which is weird because it's a tree, but like, I think it's one of the first times where you just see anger in Groot throughout the entire sort of film, because of what's going on, and it's subtle, but it's there, and you know it's there, because there's no holding back this time. I think the big scene, I think where you notice that is where Peter goes to the face off, and he just goes kill them all, and without even hesitation, nothing. Groot just does. He pretty much does. And I think that's like, usually with Groot, you would see that slight little hesitation or, little bit of silliness in that moment. You don't. It was no hesitation. It was, okay, they're dead. And I think that's where you really start to, I think that's just this thing where, as you said, they all have their own story going on. Any doubts anyone had about James Gunn with writing, they've gone. They've just gone.
I mean, I didn't really have any doubts about his writing.
I knew no one really did, but like, if anyone did, go and watch this film, and it just shows he can balance everything. Like the fact that every character got their chance to breathe and grieve throughout this film for various reasons is really, really good. And I think the ending for each Guardian was perfect. I can't really think of anything I would have changed in terms of what happened to each character. But as you said, it is Rocket's film. There's one big moment in it that always it stuck with me ever since, which is where he's in an afterlife bit, and Lila goes, "It's been your story all along. You just haven't known it yet." And it's made me want to go back and watch the previous Guardians films and see whether, because I've seen people tweet about it and show different clips from the previous films, and you do realize this was the plan all along. This has been in the ground. Like, there's stuff that I've seen today. So there's two things that I've seen today. Number one, which is when they get arrested in the first Guardians film, Rocket is referred to 89p. Wait, is it 89p13 or something like that?
Yeah, 89p.
Yeah, 89p13. He's referred to in the very first film as 89p13 when he gets arrested. The second film I've seen is again in the first film, in the arrest scene, you know, where they're doing like the whole lineup shots.
Yeah.
When it under like acquaintances or like allies and stuff, it says Groot and Lila. This is like it's moment when she said that, I was like, you don't put that in the film unless there's a reason as to basically say to the viewers, maybe you haven't realized it's kind of been Rocket's story, and it has. And the more like the fact that Rocket was one of the only ones that wasn't dusted, everyone went, why have all the other Guardians been dusted by Nebula and Rocket? It makes sense. This has been like, I do get that feeling where, yes, Star-Lord has been the main character and it's felt like that. But at the end of it, you realize that it kind of has been Rocket's story.
Yeah.
And that is such a goosebumpy moment when she says that, and when you walk out and you kind of realize that, it just sticks with you.
Yeah. No, it does. I mean, to be fair, and obviously, like you say, Star-Lord has been sort of the main character and proprietor of the marketing of it all. But for me, I always found Rocket's character and story more interesting because it was like, well, we don't really know a lot about him, and it was always teased, and it was always like you knew there was something like like if he was like taking his top off and changing or whatever. Yeah. Like in a down moment and he was like going to bed or whatever, you'd see his back and you'd see the mechanical stuff coming out of him, and it was like, and he was always very emotional. And it was like, I can't remember, it's the first, I think it's the first one where he gets drunk and then he's talking about how he feels underappreciated and how like Drax has called him vermin and shouting like that, and it was always like the Rocket side of things was always way more emotional and more attached to me than it was with Peter. Obviously, I still loved Peter's story, but Rocket was always the one I wanted to know about because there was so much emotional depth there. I think that, you know, with Peter, everyone understood his experience, everyone understood what he was going through, and everyone sort of could understand. But with Rocket, no one knew what was going on, and no one knew the background to it. And if you were wanting that background, this film definitely gives you that and then some. But it's just sort of like the journey that he goes on, not just across the trilogy, but in this film alone, is just something else entirely. Like it's like it's like you say, when he goes and has that scene with Lila, when he's sort of up in the clouds, as it were. But the thing I noticed was it was actually back at the cages, like when it was whitened out version of the cages where they were. So you were seeing again back where they met. Similar to what like when Harry at the end of the Harry Potter story, when he meets Dumbledore, they're at King's Cross.
Yeah,
sort of that crossing over moment. So I like that little touch as well. And then it was just like sort of, it was how it all sort of got wrapped up right at the end when he has the face off with the High Evolutionary, and it's like Evolutionary is obviously going at him and like telling him what he thinks of him and calling him like basically how insignificant he is.
Yeah.
And then it's that sort of moment where it's the moment where he says, when he gives him his name of 89P13, and then he goes, that's not my name. My name's Rocket Raccoon.
Rocket Raccoon.
And then it's like, and then he hits him, and then it's like, right. And it's that sort of acceptance of he is what he is when he sees, and when he saves, obviously when he starts to save the animals and he saves the little raccoons, and then he sees the bottom bit of origination raccoon, and then it's like that sort of, he understands and like he's accepting it now, and he's not hiding from it anymore. Which is what the first two films really built up, and sort of the little bits in and out of like Infinity War and Endgame of like when Thor calls him Rabbit, he's looking at like you know, there's that sort of confusion of like not understanding what's going on and all that stuff. Like it was a perfect build across the three films, and the ending to the third film really did tie it all up beautifully in my head. I don't think anyone else could have written this film. It felt like a very James Gunn film. And I just think it was perfect how it ended. I think Rocket's story was just beautifully, harrowingly told, but it was a brilliant story. So yeah, that's my sort of take on the Rocket side of things.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the ending there. I think not any of us will be able to listen to Dog Days Are Over ever again without wanting to slightly bawl our eyes out. But it's again just there's so many subtle things that lead up to that ending being so perfect. Like I think, like obviously Rockets is obvious, his journey, and then finishing up as the leader, and I think it works quite nicely going forwards, because it means that whenever they introduce the Guardians again, because they will, whenever they do that, they don't have to tell his story anymore. They can expand on the other members of the group who are far more, I would say, interesting at this point, because we don't know anything about them.
Well, it's a clean slate, isn't it? It's telling stories of people that we don't know about and who they are, but also there's a story to tell there, I think, of Rocket being the leader. Him being the guy that's leading these people and putting them together and maybe helping them become the people they need to be, like he's had to go through with his original crew. So I think there's a story there. Whether they tell it, it'll be interesting to see, because again, it'll be difficult to make it a Guardians of the Galaxy film without having the sort of, you know, I think obviously you can name it something different. You could say Guardians of the Galaxy and New Age or something, you know, like something different like that to let everybody know this is a different Guardians of the Galaxy. But I don't think it's done necessarily with the Guardians as they are, as the new shape.
No.
I definitely think we won't see, I don't think we'll see Drax again. I don't think we'll see Nebula again. Obviously it's confirmed at the end of the post-credits scene we'll see Peter again.
That was a shock to me. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know whether it was to you, but I got to the. I remember sitting there with my mate, and then that came up on the screen. He started smiling. I was like, "Did you know something I didn't know?" Because I was not. I thought this was it for across the board. You know, it really caught me off guard because when that post credit scene happened, I went, "Oh, is something funny gonna happen?" And it was like, not really. Nothing of interest really happened. And I was sitting there going, why has that been the post-credit scene then? And all of a sudden it's like, he will return. I'm like, okay.
Well, I think there's another story to tell with Peter being back on Earth and having to learn everything again. And being back with his family, like being back with his granddad, and sort of learning all of that again. And I also think there's a story telling that Peter isn't going to be, obviously he's part of the Avengers or whatever, and he's special in that regard, but in terms of like when he's taking on a new villain, or if he's being part of the Avengers, he is literally just human. He doesn't have these abilities to match up with, like Doctor Strange has got the magic, you know. I mean, even Captain America, well, Sam Wilson is the new Captain America. He's got the suit and like he's got the wings and he does all that stuff and he's highly trained. But you know, Peter Quill going into that situation isn't going to be this mega like powerful being who can save everybody. He is just going to be a human trying to work this all out. And I think that is, you know, as another story that can be told. And I do think that's probably where it's heading. And I think we'll see. Like I say, I think we'll see the Guardians again, and I think we'll see Quill. Obviously, we know we're seeing Quill again.
Yeah.
But I think that's because those are the two stories that really make more sense to continue.
Yeah.
Because Drax got his happy ending. He becomes a dad again.
Oh, just every time I think about that moment where it's like you weren't built to be a destroyer, you were built to be. Right again. Sorry to cut you off. Right,
no,
just to prove a point here as to why I'm going to every moment at the end. I was crying for the last 10 minutes of this film, all the way. I didn't stop. It didn't go. It continued throughout the credits, and then it went again, and it just went, and it went, and it went. Like it just that was just another one that just broke me. It just like, okay, I'm gonna cry for another couple of minutes now. Brilliant.
Yeah. But it's like I say, like Drax becomes a dad again. That's his perfect ending that he never thought he was gonna get. And now that he's got it, it's like, well, why does he need to come back? There isn't need for him to come back. Maybe he makes a cameo in like the Avengers Kang Dynasty or something. Like maybe he's part of that, or the secret is it what
Secret Wars? Yeah,
Secret Wars. Maybe he's a cameo on that, and that's perfectly fine. Like that's
makes
serviceable.
Sense.
Like it makes sense. And for where I think the Marvel universe is heading, it probably makes sense that him and some other versions of Drax might turn up. But I'm sure like in future podcasts we'll probably get into that. But like Drax gets his perfect ending, Nebula gets the perfect ending, and that she's become what Thanos should have been.
Yeah.
In that she's now going to be the leader of this place, and she's going to build it into the place that it should be. And she's not going to be the cruel-hearted leader that she was being built to be by Thanos. And then Mantis gets to go and do what she wants to do and have her own journey. And maybe we see that. Maybe that is something we see. I wouldn't mind seeing it as like a little one-off special or a TV series or like a 5-episode special, you know, like a limited series sort of thing. I don't know if you'll ever get a film of it. I don't know if that's where they'll head with it.
To be honest with you, this is going to sound really harsh. I get why people would want to, but if it was to happen, I don't think I'd watch it. Mantis is one of those characters there. Like I enjoy her within the Guardians, and I enjoyed her relationship with Drax, but I think that was more because of the other characters rather than her. And I'm not saying that's like any knock on like the writing or the actor's performances. Quite frankly, it's not. It's just I'm not that interested in that character. I think it is a very nice ending for that character, but the reason I was crying in that bit wasn't due to her leaving. It was the fact that Drax was sad. That's why.
But then there was that levity of it, of her going with the three creatures that they've got from the ship. So it's like she's gonna be fine. Like she's got that.
Yeah,
she'll be all right.
That's what I like. Is like it was like, you know, you need protecting. And it's like no, and then you realize why she doesn't need protection because she's taking those animals with her. Which is, I think, really nice. And I think it is nice where, as you said, like if they want to do something, they can. And if they don't want to, every fan knows full damn well she's going to be okay. Yeah. And I think that's the lovely bit about the ending of this is when we speak about each character, it's that feeling of they're going to be okay. You know, it's Drax got his ending, as you said, Nebula got hers. You've got Mantis getting hers. Gamora, I think, had a surprising ending, I would say, but I think the right one. Was not expecting her to continue and stay with the Ravagers. I thought like maybe you might get like I to be honest, I thought death might happen to somebody. But
that was one of my biggest surprises was that no one died. But when I thought about it, like when I've slept on it, I think it makes more sense because if someone did go, you couldn't have that happy ending. No. If someone's gone, everyone couldn't be like dancing around and like celebrating the fact that everyone's okay. Like it would be very much like the end of Endgame when Iron Man's gone. It's like everyone's at the funeral, and now everyone's going to go back to normal and do what they need to do.
Yeah.
I just like it makes more sense that way. I think
it does.
And like just to tie off what I was saying about everyone having the perfect ending, like Gamora going back to the Ravagers is perfect because she gets that belonging and family that she didn't have. Because obviously we're talking about a Gamora that hadn't met the Guardians yet and was sort of like running away from the fact that she was having anything to do with Thanos. She was at that point where she was leaving anyway. It just that obviously multiverse and all that stuff and the timelines all merge and things happen. So
well, that's what I really liked about that ending. Is the more I think about that ending for Gamora found her Guardians. What I love about it is like the original Gamora found the Guardians and found family. The new Gamora found the exact same thing. We just didn't know it until the end. It was only at the end do you actually realize, no, like she doesn't need the Guardians because she found a new family in herself. And I think that's always really nice, is that it wasn't that really Gamora had changed, really. Like you realize as the film sort of goes on, you know, she's got this hard exterior, but she's still the same Gamora at the end. And then you realize that actually she's fine because she's found the exact thing she was meant to find in the first place, which was a family. It was just not the Guardians.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but like I think it perfectly tied everything up, and I'm interested to see what happens with Quill next, and I'm interested to see. I mean, I would love to see Rocket in that Guardians lineup again. I have a feeling they might leave it for a very long time if they do. Because again, I mean, I think Bradley Cooper's like, I love playing Rocket. I would probably keep playing Rocket till whenever. But again, people have made it clear it's the last one. Like Batista, he's made clear he's not doing Drax again. This is his last one. And to be fair, with the ending he's got, you probably would ruin that a little bit. So yeah, like I think how it ends is very much a perfect bow on the trilogy and on all of their stories that we've not just seen during the trilogy. It's also been all the Avengers stuff and cameos and like Thor as well. Like Love and Thunder obviously touched upon where they were at and all in their headspaces by the time after like the first 20 minutes when they sort of go from their own separate ways. So but I'm very interested to see what happens with Quill next, because I think that he has more story to tell, which I didn't think would happen after the third one, but somehow they found a way. The
more I think about it, actually, just during this conversation now, the more I think that it could be a Shield thing. Because I was thinking, what's like away from the Guardians and the whole like mask that's over the top, what is it that makes Quill a really good superhero? And it's the fact that obviously the rocket boots, but that's going to be quite hard to well, probably not hard to make on Earth with how far in the future. Well, Earth's not that far in the future, but the technology,
the tech's there, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah, the tech is there, and the fact that he's very good with guns. But again, you can't have the same guns on Earth as you do away. So it wouldn't surprise me if it goes down sort of the shieldy sort of route. Wouldn't surprise me. Maybe even down the Avengers route if they really want to and keep him in a groupie sort of setting. Like I've heard rumors, and this is just a rumor that I've sort of heard, is there are some people out there who reckon that he might turn up either in the next Spider-Man film or in the Avengers film that has Spider-Man in it, and that he's the only one that remembers who Spider-Man is. And I was thinking, I was like, how does that work? Because he wasn't on Earth. He was in the galaxy. You know, how far does that spell reach is the big question. You know, does it only reach the planet or does it reach beyond? Because if it doesn't reach beyond, that would make perfect sense. He's the only one that remembers who he is. And you know, you can have that sort of relationship and stuff and built there sort of thing, you know, maybe even like a fathery sort of son bond there, which I wouldn't mind seeing. You know, he almost becomes the Yondu to Star-Lord as Star-Lord to Spider-Man sort of thing. I wouldn't mind that. The more I sort of think about that and how much that could be where that story sort of goes, because
I mean, yeah. Sorry,
there are so many ways it can go. I think for me the big ending really for him is to finish with a family, because obviously he hasn't lost it, but he'll miss the Guardians, and then it's like he's got his family at home, but obviously Grandad's old. Can't imagine Grandad's going to last much longer.
No, that's the thing, isn't it?
So, and then that's the only family that they've got. So it's like, okay, for me, the perfect ending at the end is to have a family and developing that sort of side. So it'd be interesting to see how they go with that. At the time, I was thinking why, but the more I sort of reflect on the film, I realised that actually there's a lot more to tell with Quill.
Oh yeah, there definitely is. I mean, I like the sound of what you're saying about him being sort of like maybe not the father son. I think more him and Spider-Man maybe brothers sort of thing of the sort of the outcast. They're the ones that people don't really pay attention to, and then like that's how they have their bond. I also think that part of me, I don't know why, but when I was watching that film yesterday, part of me kept going, I would love to see Quill and Deadpool interact. I would love to see that. And I think there is something there if they wanted to do it. Because I think Deadpool is probably going to play a big role in kicking off some sort of significant event in the multiverse, and that's probably how that starts with him. And obviously we know he's doing it with Wolverine, Hugh Jackman. So, you know, I'm there's so many avenues you can go down with Quill. It's just I think that obviously, unfortunately, the thing is how often does Chris Pratt want to do it? And if Chris Pratt wants to keep doing it, then they can get that story out of him, out of the character. But it's whether Chris Pratt wants to keep getting himself ready to be Star-Lord. So,
well, I think the positive is like the thing that I've sort of realized is what they've done really cleverly is the as we said, the two stories that are still to be told is Quill's and the Guardians, New Guardians. You got Quill's story. The best part about that is he doesn't have to turn up all the time anymore. The Quill, like Star-Lord will return thing, is just a matter of like he can return whenever. He can return in 3 years' time and then not turn up for a while and come up again. You know, it's because his story on its own and as its own film, I think is sort of done. I think it's a matter of like almost those cameo-y sort of appearances, or you know, the side person appearances in bigger films and stuff, where he will sort of continue his story and sort of wrap it up. Because to be honest, if he was to have his own film, you could wrap it up in 2 hours, done, easy like that. Whereas I think what they're probably going to do is space that out, which then, as you said, allows Chris Pratt to have that time to go and do his other projects that he wants to do. And then for me, the New Guardians, the smartest thing they've done of all, who are the only two characters that stayed? The CGI ones.
Yeah.
Which means that the people like you got Vin Diesel and Bradley Cooper can go into a recording studio for 1 day and record all their lines in like a couple of days.
I'm sure it takes more than 1 day, but
it's
a lot easier to do that. Yeah,
a lot easier to do that than turn up to multiple shoots, have to redo all the shoots, because like it doesn't even matter if you deliver the line perfectly the first time, because you've got to redo it from a different camera angle. And all of that, and deliver it perfectly again. Whereas obviously when you're doing voice lines and stuff like that, obviously you need to do multiple different versions of it, but you don't have to do it perfectly from multiple different camera angles. Once you've got that one perfect take, you're done in that respect until like the next line, or until they want a different version of that line. But once you do that line happily and perfect it happily, that's that line done until you have to do it sad, or you get what I mean? Like,
I get what you mean. Yeah,
like it's that perfect sort of balance. I think where they've clearly made that smart decision. Where the only people staying on are the CGI ones, because all the others can sort of continue. I think obviously some people are like, oh, I wouldn't mind if, you know, this is like, because that's like the nice ending, and you know, the Guardians just don't return. They are returning because Adam Warlock's in it. Quite frankly, Warlock's too big of a character not to bring back, and you can't bring him back without bringing the rest of them back, because it makes no sense now if they were to do that. So I think that's quite clear that that's going to happen. And I, as you said, I'm looking forward to it. I think that it was that almost perfect. It was that perfect arc, and you had those surprises. You had those moments where you thought, "This is it," for so many characters in this film. And it really subverted every expectation you sort of had, which I think it is just mightily impressive. Like to have, as we said, we've got all these different storylines in our head of how they're going to go and possibly go with it, and that's what you want, you know. There's a lot of, I think, speaking on the sort of phase 4-5 sort of front, is there's a lot of films that kind of feel like dead ends to a point, or they feel like, you know, that you could have had them appear again and you didn't need that film to be there, or like this, that, and the other, or nothing's really happened since that film's come out that's really referenced something. This is the first one that sort of felt, well, maybe apart from Spider-Man actually, and that's probably why it's probably one of my favorites, in the fact that you haven't, I think this is the first one where you're really going to feel a bit of an after effect sort of going into films, because of course you will. And I like that. I think, you know, that's something that we sort of lacked a little bit recently. And you, like, bloody hell, I felt an after effect just going home, let alone going into future films. Like,
no, it's right. You are right. I think the thing that has been lost in the majority of the Marvel projects recently is there has been such a question of what happens next, because a lot of things don't really have that big purpose to go to, or the next step. And I think the Guardians film and Spider-Man No Way Home set up perfectly what could happen next. It didn't necessarily spell it out as to say, right, this is what's happened next. Obviously, we know both Peters are going to be rebuilding themselves and starting again from scratch, because Parker, no one knows who he is, and Quill is sort of in a similar position where no one really knows who he is, but, you know, apart from maybe the Avengers and like a few people he fought with. So yeah, like that's sort of where they're both building from, and it's the building block to start again sort of thing. And everyone else sort of has a question mark of, do we really need to see them again? Is it over? Like Doctor Strange is still around. We know that. He's running around with
an eye on his head.
The eye on his head, and doing what
I can't remember what the woman's name is, but I know in the comics they become lovers. So
it's Charlize Theron playing her. I know that much. I remember her. And he's running around doing his thing, but again, we don't know really. There wasn't really a question of, there wasn't that sort of peek into what's going on next. And a lot of the characters have that. We don't know if Scarlet Witch is still alive. I heavily suspect she is, but we don't know if she's still around.
But this is the thing: is only from reports do you really know that she is definitely coming back. But it's kind of like there was none of like what we got in the post credits this time. But what, like, the post credits of this one just kind of proves what they should have done in Multiverse of Madness, which is like there should have been a thing where it was like Scarlet Witch will return, like, because her story kind of, if it ended there, it ended there, and you kind of would have got it. You kind of would have understood it. Yes, unfortunately, she would have ended as a villain, but you would have understood it, you know, because it did feel like a little bit of an ending, you know. I think the ending of that had Doctor Strange will return, as if he wasn't returning. We knew that. Like, there's no reason. There's the one bugbear I sometimes have with the post credits. Sometimes when they're like, blah blah will return. It's like, well, obviously, yes, we know that. Like, whereas I think this one was one where it did say blah blah will return, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that, and that's now made me excited because I know for a fact he's coming back, and now I'm thinking, well, where? because they've clearly got a plan for where. So where is that? And you know, and that's how you should feel coming out of the cinema. You should feel like it was an ending for one thing and a start of another. And the fact that this movie should have felt like the biggest ending of them all, and yet it felt like probably one of the biggest beginnings we've had. And
yeah, absolutely. no, like it's perfectly right, because, and that's always been the magic of the Marvel things, is that while like a sub story or like the person story could finish, there was always that here's what's next. And for a few years, really after Endgame, a lot of the films or series didn't really have that. There wasn't really a continuation of, right, we know where this is going next, and this is sort of, or there wasn't there hasn't been, this is a definitive ending for this character. But we've had that in this film, and we've had that obviously in Spider-Man. I think those are the two big tick boxes of, yes, this is like Marvel at its best, really. When it's firing on all cylinders. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. Obviously, glad that the film worked, because I can see an alternative reality where this didn't go down well and it sort of stank up the joint, but thankfully it didn't, and it has hit the cylinders. So now we can just sort of go back and watch the trilogy and enjoy it for what it is, which is probably, which, like I said at the start, is the best Marvel trilogy that there has been. Easily.
And like one thing from the film before we start wrapping up that I do want to point out, because I think people will be thinking, you haven't spoken about this yet, and it's something we probably should, because we touched upon a lot of characters in this one, and we spoke about a lot of characters in this one. And I know people are going to be expecting me to talk about Warlock. I don't think we need to. I think that it's quite obvious what he was. He was a B level villain for this one, turned good.
Really, I didn't really see him as a villain though. Like,
not
sort of.
Yeah,
he was a B subplot. He wasn't even a B plot. I think he was there to get to the end. And be part of the Guardians at the end. And then I think the next part is what is more interesting story be, where he probably becomes the full Warlock that we know from the comics. And
well, this is the thing, is as one of my friends put perfectly, which was Warlock's gone from a unstoppable monster, because obviously the powers and stuff that he's got, but they've sort of counteracted that with him being a little bit ditzy, and like that's how you sort of counteract him being super duper powerful, is having him a bit ditzy, and then over time it will start to mature, which would be a really interesting journey to go on, where he can do that within the Guardians. He wouldn't need his own film, because he can do that within the Guardians, and you just see that over time, like you have done with all the Guardians that have sort of been here now. But there's one big moment at the end that makes you really emotional when you realize why it happened, and that's Groot speaks.
Oh yeah.
And it's been confirmed by James Gunn since as to why this happens, and the reason why is so emotional, it kills me every time I think about it, which is the massive subplot of this film is the fact that Gamora can't understand Groot, because she hasn't been with him long enough, so doesn't understand what he means by I am Groot all the time. And Groot continues to say I am Groot throughout the entire thing, into the very end, where he just says, I love you guys. And none of the Guardians react to him talking, even though that's a big moment and every fan's just reacted in the room. Why haven't? And the reason why, and even James Gunn has said this, is because we spent so much time with him, we've started to understand his language. That is just a beautiful, tiny little thing. It's such a tiny moment, a tiny little thing in the film, that a thread, the tiniest thread that just goes through the entire film until you get to that moment at the end, which again is a small little moment, but it means so much. Like, and it hits so hard. Like, I just, that moment broke me, and then when I realized why it happened, broke me even more. But
no, like I say, like at the time when this in the cinema, I was like, what? And then it was just like, but then I started to think about it. I was like, is that how it's supposed to have worked? And then it was like when James Gunn confirmed it, I was like, okay, right, I've understood it for what it is. But it was just a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
I even liked the bit when after like all the battles and the back on Nowhere, and he says, "I am Groot to Gamora," and Gamora's like, "It was cool working with you too." Like
Yeah.
it was like that sort of. It was that she's not there, but she's almost the Gamora we know now.
Yeah.
Or she's now pretty as close to what we might get to being that Gamora.
Yeah, because you see the little moments when Quill survives, and you see her sort of react and go, "Oh, thank God!" You see those little moments, and I think it is a really nice ending between Gamora and Quill as well, where like they don't look at each other while saying it, but she goes, "We would have been fun, wouldn't we?" And he goes, and the acting is incredible, by the way. Where you see it on his face, almost him reliving every single moment that has happened with him and Gamora, and he goes, "You have no idea." Like that sort of ending is the perfect moment where they both go their separate ways, but understand that what they had was beautiful. And as fans, we understand that, and the fact that them as characters understand that, but can now go their separate ways and move forwards, is just a really nice ending for them both.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I mean, yeah, like there's so many moments in this film I almost forgotten about it whilst we were talking about it, but then, yeah, like. I think that's a perfect way to end it, to be honest. And
yes, there's just so many perfect moments that you literally in an hour cannot speak about all of them.
It's nigh on impossible.
Yeah, it is nigh on impossible. But the one thing that we do on the Nerds podcast before we wrap up, having a review, and Grimmy knows what's coming. Grimmy, rating out of 10, my boy.
I would say 9.5 out of 10.
Ooh.
I think the only blemish on it is the Warlock stuff. Because I was expecting him to be a big part of it, but again, it's a minor gripe in the grand scheme of things. I think it's, you know what? No, I can't even complain about that. I'm just say 10 out of 10. I just think it's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful film. It's towering, it's beautiful, and it's a gut punch, kick, and slam dunk of a film. I can't explain it any other way. I think it was just perfect as it was. Are there things that will totally disturb you and upset you? Yes. Are there things that will totally make you happy and ecstatic for how it's panned out? Absolutely. And I think the lows go perfectly with the highs in terms of the bad moments in terms of the good moments, and it's the classic Guardians of the Galaxy recipe. So yeah, it's 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, they balanced that harrowing and happy side and keeping the Guardians feel despite it being harrowing at times. It's very clever. And what comes to no one's surprise that this might be the easiest 10 I've ever given. Which does mean that in the two reviews that we've done, I've given 10 out of 10 both times. So let's hope that doesn't bloody continue. Jesus. I mean, let's hope it continues, because that means we're not going to have any bad films coming out.
I guess, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, this is one of the easiest 10s I've ever given. This film made me feel, as I've mentioned before, things I've never really felt in the cinema. There's only one other film that has made me feel differently to, again, any other film, which was Infinity War. I'd never gone out of a cinema. I'd never heard a film finish and hear silence in an entire room.
Yeah.
This had a similar feel. There was no speaking. There was nothing. Like, there was so much concentration on this film and so much emotional baggage that it just gave me afterwards. I was not okay for the rest of the day after watching it.
No, it left stuff on you, didn't it? It made you think, and I think the best films do that.
Yeah, it left an impression on me, and I already can't wait to go and watch it again, and just see anything that I missed the first time, because I think there will be subtle things that you do miss, because it, as we've said, every character sort of breathes. But yeah, the 2 10 out of 10s for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I mean, thank you guys for watching. If you have enjoyed this review, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, like we know you guys do anyway. And put your thoughts in the comments section down below. It'll be interesting to see what you guys think. I'm probably going to be proven wrong because it's YouTube and people get angry all the time. But I'm expecting a lot of good things to be said. So if it is a lot of good things, I would just want to know your favorite moments as well. So put down your little review and put down your favorite moment. It's going to be very hard to put that down, but just to, so we kind of see what you guys really thought and what you thought was the moment that sort of made you love this film. Or hate it if you really hated it. But
I mean, to be fair, I can understand. I could understand why. Yeah, like if people don't like it, I could get why. Like, but I just think if you've been part of the universe and you've seen the first 2 Guardians films and you understand the story, I think I don't know how you come out of there not being happy with that film.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure to leave your comments, and as I said, like, share, subscribe, and thank you, Grimmy, for joining me.
Always.
And we shall see all of you next week.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.